Recently I got engaged to my amazing fiancée Amy. I was the happiest I have ever been when Amy said yes, and was nothing but excited for our wedding. We started planning the venues, the dates, and the invites. When talking about who to invite, we both agreed to invite out coworkers as we have worked in our respective jobs for years and like them all. As I checked that off the list, Amy spoke up and said everyone from my job can come except my work friend Tally. Tally is also one of my close friends, so this surprised me that Amy didn't want to invite her. She has met Tally multiple times and there didn't seem to be any issues. When I asked why, she said she just doesn't like her and finds our friendship uncomfortable, saying she thinks that Tally is the type of person to try to sway taken men and be the center of attention. After talking some more to see where she got this idea, it turned out this was based on nothing but Tally's looks, as even Amy admitted that Tally is always very kind to her. But still, Amy is adamant about Tally not going and said that she makes her insecure. Amy is a beautiful woman, so I don't know why she feels this way. I told Amy that if it makes her feel comfortable not having Tally at the wedding, then that is fine. But before invitations go out, I wanted to speak to her privately to let her know to save embarrassment. Amy agreed, and that was really that. We didn't speak on the matter after. A week or so later I went into work and Tally started to ignore me, only really talking if it was work related. I was confused as it isn't just her, our coworkers have started to ignore her and acting strange to me. So I contacted her BF, only for him to be sarcastic on the phone. I asked what the problem was when he asked if I actually didn't know what happened. He then filled me in. Turned out a few days earlier Amy came to my work on my day off with invitations. I had no idea she even made them yet. And handed everyone an invite in front of Tally, then saying to Tally, "You aren't invited, women like you aren't welcome," which has sparked everyone suggesting she is my other woman. Since then she has been harassed by some guys at work and shunned by the women. She is now looking for another job. This pissed me off and I apologized profusely as I didn't know. When I got home that night, I confronted Amy about this. She denied it at first, but then told me she did it, but it is now not an issue because she's quitting her job. I flipped on her, saying how she clearly didn't trust me to say and that she crossed a line doing all this behind my back. She didn't see the problem and got upset, asking me why I'm so mad, me responding, "If we are really going to get married, get your insecurities in check and grow up." I stayed at a friend's since but have had texts from Amy, her friends, and her mother saying for this and that Amy doesn't deserve this treatment. I have made many attempts to speak to Tally privately to find out what was happening prior to contacting her BF. She brushed me off by saying she either had work to do or that there was nothing to talk about. No one would really speak to me, so I contacted her BF as a last resort. Her BF says he is going to pass on to Tally what I said to him on the phone. The wedding is currently on hold, that is also why I'm staying at my friend's. Need some distance to figure stuff out. Nothing has or ever will happen with Tally, no feelings, nothing adult, absolutely nothing. Tally is happy and in love, her boyfriend is someone I also consider a close friend. I was happy with Amy prior to this. And Tally is more like a sister to me. Unfortunately, due to what Amy has done, all I can really do is damage control. Of course I am planning to explain to everyone what has happened. I do not want Tally to be going through this. She is a genuinely kind person who does not deserve any of this. My dad died and I'm scared my family won't get along. So yesterday after my dad comes home he eats what my mom made for him. Eggs and Spam. To be clear, he has a pre-existing medical history of high blood pressure and gout. First found out when he was admitted to the hospital in 2015 when he fell ill. And we basically had to force him to go to the hospital BC he didn't want to go. He was put on medication since, with changes to them maybe a year or so ago. So back to when after he ate. My half-sister heard a thud around 740-ish and told me to check BC. She thought maybe my parents are arguing. I go down and see my dad on the kitchen floor, my mom behind him a few feet away, and I hear him snoring. I ask my mom a question, get worried, run back upstairs and knock on my sister's door. She calls my other sister and also tells me to stop wasting time, call 911. I was scared and frantic. I wish I called 911 or saw him when he came in so I could maybe have called sooner. They get frantic too and we all start yelling at each other and I try to maintain order also as I'm talking to 911 person. At some point in all of this, my brother-in-law yells for help and I help him turn my dad onto his side. He said he could choke on his saliva. My dad stops snoring and we start panicking. The EMS tells us how to perform CPR, but my sisters keep yelling, and so I try to get them working together. They finally start working on it. One is doing compression and the other giving him air and sometimes rotating. Fire department and ambulance gets here and they start doing the same thing but also have defibrillators, and honestly, I'm just in shock still. It was maybe 8:03 p.m. when they came or so, I don't remember, it's all a blur. I checked my phone for timestamp, but I called twice so I forgot when original call was placed. They called it at 8:50 p.m. and I just began to lose it. My aunt comes and my sister is trying to call my dad's work to let his bosses know. We talk about how we want my dad's arrangements and agree on cremation. We don't have the money for anything else, but also my sister wants the remains. My mom is bipolar schizophrenic and my sisters and bro-in-law don't get along. Her because of a whole history that would keep you here forever if I tried to type it. My dad was a bad person, but he still chose us and tried his best to provide regardless of his fallacies. He had my mom's back too, saying he wouldn't kick her out or place her in a mental home. My sisters kinda want that, I think, but I'm scared to talk about it. My mom is okay sometimes, but also acts up of her mental illness sometimes, and my dad and I were her constants regardless of what happened. My mom is old and still wants to benefit from some social security services that my dad had, but my sisters and I think we should get a majority control of his account. There's a lot of renovations to be done. He ignored upkeep of the house for a number of years, example, the roof. My mom is not very sad about the ordeal. She had a long history of mental abuse from my dad and I understand, but we for some reason stayed together. It how to move forward except for one moment at a time, and I'm still waiting for funeral home to come pick up his body. It's 8:13 a.m. now, been waiting since night before. And I have been crying, but also I can't sleep, and I'm sorry if this doesn't meet guidelines. I just need to vent. Even though I told a few friends, I'm still in disbelief. How this will moving forward. I believe it can though. But it's hard to stay positive. I am a 32 years old female and getting married to my fiancé, a 41 male, next year. After we got engaged, I suggested it might be nice if I asked my fiancé's niece, who's 15, if she wanted to be a bridesmaid too. I've only met her a couple of times, so we're not close. But she seemed like a cool kid, and I thought it might be a nice way for us to bond / get to know each other / involve her in the wedding. She's the only niece / nephew on either side of the family. Anyway, cut to a few weeks ago and we're in my fiancé's hometown to visit his family and discuss wedding related stuff. His brother, sister-in-law and their daughter came over, and I noticed this time that she was dressed a lot more androgynous than I remembered. The topic moved to wedding dresses and bridesmaids' dresses, and I could see she was immediately uncomfortable. Her parents, her mom really, and grandma were making comments about how she'd need to be more feminine / brush her hair, etc. And how nice it would be to see her like that. I'll be honest and say this hit a nerve with me, as I was very much a tomboy as a teenager, even though I'm not anymore. And it absolutely broke me whenever my relatives would say things like that. Eventually, her mother made a comment along the lines of, "It'll be nice to see you dressed like a girl for once." And she looked really sad / embarrassed / upset. In response, because that really hit a nerve, I immediately told her that my maid of honor would be wearing a trouser suit for the wedding and not a dress, and that I'd given all the bridesmaids the option of wearing anything they want as long as it's in the wedding color. To make things easier, I pulled out my phone and started showing her photos of the ideas my friend had sent me, the jumpsuit, culottes, a trouser suit, a tailored tux, etc., and let her know that she could pick anything at all she wanted. She could even wear jeans and trainers if that made her comfortable, and that it's a wedding, not a fashion show. My niece perked up a bit when I said that, but her mom looked really pissed off. She's since asked my fiancé to pressure me into getting all the bridesmaids' dresses so their daughter will have to wear one, which no. My husband doesn't give a shit what she wears, but obviously also doesn't want his family and me to be arguing on the wedding day. I don't want to back down because I know what it feels like to be pressured into wearing something that makes you uncomfortable. But on the other hand, I know it's only for a day and it'd make the family happy. Tim and I met in an English literature class our junior year of college, and we've been together the 10 years since. While he ended up going into IT, I stayed in the liberal arts track and ended up doing non-profit work after college when I realized I didn't actually want to be a school teacher. Just to say that we always assumed he'd out-earn me by a considerable margin. Though when he made more, I always insisted we split things evenly to avoid potential resentment down the road. I've had sort of a non-linear career path, but ended up switching to the corporate world. To make a long story short, my liberal arts degree and time doing non-profit work gave me a lot of skills that enable me to really excel professionally in some more niche areas. I recently started a new job as a consultant, making way more than I'd ever anticipated. When I got the offer, I told Tim that the pay was amazing, but he didn't ask about the actual amount, and I didn't want to be braggy about it, especially since I was fairly sure it was above his current income. Well, we just put in an application for a new place, and in the process of having to submit our pay stubs, it's become obvious that I make roughly 30% more than he does now. I expected him to think that was cool, since he's a feminist and has always been super supportive of my career. But instead he started to make increasingly harsh jabs about how I cheated the system to get where I am. That no English lit major makes more than a cybersecurity professional without cheating somehow. His major point is that I got my first job out of nepotism, which set me up to trample more qualified people who didn't have the same advantages. It's true that I got my first post-college job after being referred by a sorority sister, but it was for non-profit work making $22K year, not exactly at somebody's daddy's firm. He also points out that at my first corporate job, I snagged a big promotion after volunteering to take on starting up the company's diversity //equity / inclusion program, and I'll admit that were I a white man, it's highly unlikely I would have been able to be the face of the eventually high-profile diversity program. Tim also notes that I was awarded a small college scholarship for being a promising female writer, when no such scholarship existed for males. But all that said, I still don't feel like I cheated the system, and it makes me angry to listen to him joke about it. Especially since I grew up blue-collar and worked full-time while going to school full-time to afford my degree. I reached a breaking point yesterday when he made a crack about how the new / first woman on his team is an obvious diversity hire. I told him that his jokes about women cheating the system to get ahead aren't funny or guy talk ribbing, as he says. They make him sound like an insecure little boy. He told me I was being a naive Karen, and we haven't really talked since yesterday.